Hi, welcome to the Root Access Show on Google Developers Live. I'm Don Dodge, your host for today. The Root Access Show is a show for startups where we discuss issues and problems that are typical to any company that's trying to grow and become a big business. Today, we're going to talk about how to get the attention of influential bloggers and tech press. And my guest today is Louis Gray, one of the first bloggers that I ever knew.
Thanks for having me on, Don. It's good to see you here at Google.
Well, thank you. So, Louis, I discovered you back in 2006. You were one of the first bloggers that I ever read. So tell us, how did you get started and what kinds of things did you write about?
Oh, I appreciate that. I started writing, I could have picked the name a little bit better, but I started writing at louisgray.com back in 2006. It was just a fun outlet for me. I was working at a network storage company on the enterprise space, but I really had a lot of passion for Web 2.0 and what was happening with internet and social and some of these tech companies like Google and Apple and LinkedIn. And so what I found was I could kind of play that enterprise role during the day and come home and write about consumer software. And it was really exciting to see that the opinions that I had some kind of resonance with those who hit the stories. I found that when I would write about LinkedIn, I would have a very good hit rate of people coming in and saying, you know what, that feature that you wanted, we've added that. Or I wrote an article called 10 Suggestions for Google Reader way back in 2007. And the next day, one of the software engineers at Google said, those are some great suggestions. We came to the same conclusions you did in our team offsite. And so I started to really feel like I could have an impact. And then I branched off from talking about companies that had already been around and well known to finding new companies that no one had ever heard about and finding that role of being the first user or one of the first 10 users and trying to foresee what would happen with that. I know often with your background you talk about VC investing and angel investing, but as a blogger what I wasn't doing was putting money into a company. I was putting my time and my effort and my energy. And I felt like a VC with no cash. And so you could see I would pick my winners and pick my favorites, and 3,000 posts later we had a lot of people paying attention to what was happening, got a lot of great companies to start with me and take some of the feedback that I was giving them to enhance their products and get better.
So you were one of the first bloggers, you and Mike Arrington and Jason Calacanis and Fred Wilson, and there were maybe a dozen or so bloggers who became very well known and were early in the space. What kinds of things interest you now? You've been doing this for 6 or 7 years. What kinds of stories capture your attention and do you like to write about?
Well, I think when you mention those names, I almost feel like I could sneak into the room and be the guy in the background who no one talks to. Those are some pretty good names you threw out there. One of the things that I really took to heart when I first started looking at blogging was finding a way for people to communicate more quickly, to consume more information more rapidly, and not just more information, but the right information at the right time. I think obviously Google is a great place to see that happening. That was one of the things that got me excited about coming here. You look at big trends and the way that people are going to have the right information at the right time on their mobile phones or any other devices. You look at Project Glass and the things that are happening there in terms of having that available. I really like the movement to the cloud. I've come to this point with Chrome OS, and I know it sounds like a Google fanboy, but I really believe in what they're doing. I really look at the cloud operation of it and being able to get to any computer to get to my data at any time of day. It really doesn't matter which device I have, just that I can log in and get my content. And that makes sense to me. I think when you look from a startup perspective, there are a lot of people who are finding it easier for people to share no matter what type of interest they have. One of the things that you and I both kind of grew up with the web is that you found a kind of siloing around a specific interest for a site. So if you liked motorcycles, you went to a motorcycle site. If you were into fly fishing, you went to a fly fishing site. And what's happened is these more broad networks, be they Pinterest or Google Plus with communities and Facebook groups, they're having a horizontal foundation for any kind of a community to prosper and flourish, and for commerce to take place there, and for people to communicate globally. And so that still gets me excited. I think you look at the types of ways that people can communicate instantly about everything, where you can be in a shared conversation, be it through hashtags or anything else, with anyone around the world to find common interests. It's really incredible.
So if I'm a startup founder and I want you to write about my company, How do you suggest that I approach you? What kinds of things should I say? What preparation should I have?
As previously mentioned, if I'm playing that role of the seed capital guy with no money, I want to be part of that team that helps get the story right. I want to make sure that when I'm committing my time to write a post, and usually I write too long, so if I'm writing a lot of content, I want to make sure that I've picked a company that I can stand behind. I think a lot of times when you look at tech blogging, you can get a view of having negative opinion. Now that guy, he always rips on companies. I made a conscious decision back in 2007 to not be that guy. And that if I was going to write about something, that it was going to be worth my time and worth my readers' time. I found that writing negatively against the company wasted my time, wasted the readers' time, and wasted the entrepreneur's time. And so obviously, if I didn't write about you, that might be a soft signal I wasn't a big fan. So what I want to do is be a partner to the person who's writing it. The way that I get to find out about them is a number of ways. I'm a geek, and so I like to look at logs. I used to look at my referral logs all the time to see who was coming into my website. And that was the way I found a number of companies back in 2006 to 2008 with launches like small companies like ReadBurner and Link River and Taloo. I looked at FriendFeed very early on and saw what those guys were doing, was very excited about the potential for that site that eventually got acquired by Facebook. And you look at finding out this new company that might or might not even have launched yet, being one of the first 5 to 10 users and say, what can I do to take you guys to the next level? You might know Edwin Kabakian, who came out of Netscape and wrote the application Feedly. I found out about Feedly from someone in his network who I'd written about before. And so you kind of get that reputation where, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. So they referred me to Edwin, and his product Feedly was in incubation maybe 5 or 6 months, where I sat on the story and didn't write about it and kept providing feedback, almost like informal QA. And by the time he was ready to launch, I think my post was like 3,000 words. And so I think what I'm trying to say is a small email that's even personalized to me isn't going to cut it. It's going to be something where it's a long-term relationship where they're investing a piece of effort with you and you're willing to give that back. Not only am I going to be an evangelist for your company, not only am I going to want to tell people why your product is better, but I'll be a user too. You know, if I look at this product and I say, yeah, I get it, it's interesting, but I'm not a user, I know it's a throwaway post. And so obviously you flash forward a few years, here I am at Google, the ability for companies to pitch me and for me to blog about it doesn't always make sense anymore, simply because people perceiving that as being Google's words or people interpreting Google as either a competitor or a partner. And so I kind of played it safe, held back on a lot of those things, but you can see from those applications which I use and those people who I engage with what it is I'm still a fan of and really excited about.
So as a startup founder, should I send emails to every blogger, make a list and send it to every blogger I know, or should I try to focus on the ones who maybe have written about companies in my space before? Or what's the strategy?
I think one of the buzzwords we used to hear a lot about was micro-targeting. And you look at whether it's your Salesforce CRM service or what have you, but the ability to find the right message to the right person is critical. You can easily know if I get a message that's off topic that comes into my inbox. I don't want to be either a follower of a post that happened 2 days ago on a well-known site, which I know I saw and you didn't trick me when you sent it to me. And I certainly don't want to be the 10th person in a BCC line, like, Dear Tech Press. You know, when you see that, you just know, like, hey, that's going to go on somewhere else, and maybe tomorrow someone else will write it. But it's critical to find out in your industry who's passionate about what it is that you know you do well. And then you personalize that note. You say, hey, I really see that you like aggregation. Let's talk about that. I really see that you're a big fan of electric vehicles. Whatever that is, that's your niche. And say, I want to give you access to my product before anybody else. I want to give you a unique code that you can offer your readers so that, you know, if I have 500 invites, I can see how fast they get given away. It's really exciting to be part of that ability to get people to get their word out. I remember specifically there was a story about a company called LazyFeed. And LazyFeed was a fun way to find your interests and follow those along from RSS feeds that you didn't even follow. But the entrepreneur gave me 500 invite codes, which I put up in a Google spreadsheet, put the link out on Twitter and FriendFeed, and just watched them get used up. And within a day, all the invites were gone. And so for me, that looked like a spot where the guy knew, even if I wasn't the big name, like all those gentlemen that you mentioned, be they Jason or Fred or Michael, I even have to use their first names with you, he knew that I could make the impact because I was so focused on that industry and so spot on with the information consumption world and being able to distribute that and have an impact.
As a startup, should I be a blogger myself? Should I try to get the story out that way? Is it helpful?
Absolutely. There's no question in my mind. I even say this for anyone. When it comes to even hiring an employee, I'll ask somebody, do you have a blog? And when they say no, you go, uh-oh. Why not? Why are you not so excited about your industry that you can't write about it every day? What is it that shows to me that you don't have the intellectual curiosity to take a stand and make an effort? So what happens with a company, be it their blog or their Facebook G+ stream, their Pinterest page these days, whatever it is that gives them an outlet to shape their own story, to interact with people. You look recently at Elon Musk having a direct interaction with a New York Times reporter who came out with a report of his car that he didn't particularly like and didn't think was accurate. If he didn't have a blog and didn't have a mouthpiece to be able to respond and have a kind of interchange with people, starting at that day would not have worked. And I've seen companies do that where they have some kind of PR crisis and then that day they open their Twitter account. It's too late. The day to start that is the day that you're ready to be public and have people be aware of your ideas. And I think that goes for anybody who wants to make an impact, be you a new startup or someone who has views on the industry. A blog is an incredible tool for that.
How about public relations firms? There are PR agencies out there who say that they will get my startup story in front of influential bloggers or tech press. Does that work? Is that a good investment for a startup to spend money on a PR agency?
I've got about 15 years in the Valley at this point. I've hired PR firms. I've played the role of PR for different companies. And so I can see a place where if you lack the marketing and public relations and communications background within your startup, you don't have that ability to shape a story and to know where those targets are, you absolutely need someone who can play that role. Whether they're the founder who can do that, or the VP of marketing who can do that, or even if you need an outside agency. Obviously, it would be very simple to say, no, I don't want to hear from the PR firm, I'd rather hear from the founder. But to be honest, I'd rather have the founder writing code. And so while I like having that one-to-one direct conversation with the startup founder, that's not always possible. And so you can have, going back to what we mentioned before in terms of a targeted approach, you can have a good relationship with a PR firm or a PR individual if they, again, abide by the same rules, which is, hey, we know you're really interested in wireless speakers, and so we're going to keep you updated about Sonos, right? Or we know that you're really somebody who gets next-generation communication platforms. I'm the person representing TweetDeck, and I want to talk to you about how that works. And so that's okay. It's kind of like the B+ approach. You still need to do that. But most of the time, if I only have a seed round of funding, I'm not going to burn that money on a PR firm. I'm going to find a way to have a personal relationship with the handful of bloggers or social media influencers who can have a real impact.
So you made an excellent point. PR agencies are not only about making introductions to bloggers and tech press, they're about helping you shape the story and tell the story in an interesting way, right? So a lot of startup people probably aren't that good at that. Are there PR agencies that are particularly good, or do you look for agencies that have experience in your domain, or how would you select a PR agency?
That's a great question. I think, having, as I mentioned before, having come from that enterprise technology space, there's a certain group that know networking especially well. And so they'll have a great relationship with publications like Computer World and Information Week and InfoWorld, and the online equivalents like Search Storage or Byte and Switch. If you look over at a consumer level, you'll have people answering in a different way. I have a great relationship with TechCrunch or Mashable or Engadget or what have you. And you want to find out those types of relationships. You want to have a proven track record of having seen them work with startups like you. Not necessarily your competitors, but startups who are at the same stage that you are. People who have dealt with the seed round, the A rounds, the B rounds, etc. Those who have looked at lifestyle startups or startups for women, whatever that is that you believe is your niche. Have they gotten experience in that way? Have they got a proven track record of delivering positive, consumer and customer-friendly press in the place? And so if you can do that and you can see that they do it, go ahead and pull those. It just takes them being able to pitch you well. And if they can't pitch you well, how the heck are they going to pitch Mike Arrington?
So say a little bit about how you should use Twitter or Google Plus or blogs or video. How does that mix work, and how do you use each of them differently?
As a human, that's my first answer. And the reason I say that is because you can be wordsmithed to death to the point where content that goes out on your blog or your Twitter account or your Facebook just doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound like a human said it. When you look at somebody like Elon Musk, when he's tweeting, you know he's the guy writing it because it's got a lot of energy. When you want to do that, you want to make each one of these channels a representative of you and the company. You have to put some thought into it. You have to have a mental filter of what shouldn't be there, but it has to reflect your company well. There's a big difference between having a social channel that reflects the company and it being a marketing wind tunnel, right? And there's room for that. I think that if you look at a output stream from a company, it's okay if like 20 to 40% of it is marketing or sales related, but the rest of it should be engaging with the industry. And you can see there's humans behind it who are thinking about the industry, engaging with reporters, engaging with competition if it makes sense, talking directly to customers, using it as a support forum. There's so many things. I mean, it's funny you ask this question because I bet in 5 and 10 years we shouldn't be asking this question. It's just going to be so commonplace. It's like back in 2006, 2007, you would have entire conventions around being a blogger or being a Twitter user. And that's so foreign now, thank goodness. Because that becomes part of the background and part of what everyone expects you to do as an individual who has employment or has a startup idea. That if you are on the web and you have a presence, you should have a social presence in each of these places.
So to summarize then, the things I should do as a startup founder, be a blogger, use Twitter, use Google Plus, and I think you mentioned having a PR agency to help you shape the story if you haven't already done it yourself.
Well, obviously your startup should have a story to begin with, or else you're in trouble. You know, nobody's going to give you, or very few people are going to give you a seed round with no ideas. So if you have an idea, you have to take it to the next level of it being a story. Where does your story fit? At what level is your product? Is it ready to go out now? Is this something that you're ready to launch in 3 months or in 6 months? Is there a reason that you're here? Why is it that you're better? Why is it that I'm going to switch my time using one application to yours? Because what you haven't yet invented is the ability for more hours in a day. Or, you know, everyone wishes we had teleportation. You could reduce traffic and all these great things. But because you have a limited set of amount of time and a limited amount of time for people to consume information and use this, you need to find that story. If you don't think you can communicate that story, find someone who can help you. And that could be your spouse, it could be your PR firm, it could be your VP of marketing, someone who can really make that difference to get that story across. One of the greatest things I can say as someone who has broken the story on those companies like TweetDeck, as I mentioned, is I had a one-to-one relationship with somebody like Ian Dodsworth. Ian was the founder of TweetDeck, and what he would do is when he would have an iterative update, you know, if he's going from 1.2 to 1.3, he would email the day before and say, hey Lewis, I've got this update to TweetDeck coming, these are the features it's going to have. You can go ahead and write the post today, and everyone else can cover it tomorrow. Now that was fun. I would have an exclusive story for a little bit, I would have the extra time to really get the story right, and one thing, and not to derail your conversation, but one thing that I got to have as an independent blogger for a long time was to have the face-to-face relationships at big companies like Google. And once you've established some level of credibility with one team, they'll introduce you to others. And a lot of the success I had with breaking news stories and getting relationships came through people at larger firms. And so I would first meet with the blogger team at Google, and I'd go across campus and meet with the Google Reader team, and then talk to the FeedBurner team, and they'd have friends who had recently left, and I'd talk to the Zuglers. And that's where it all starts. Once you've cultivated a good relationship where they can rely on you for interesting insight and the ability to write well and get them to the next level on their product, you've really made something.
Excellent. Well, Lewis, thank you very much for joining us on Root Access. And watch the Google Developers Live schedule for the next instance of Root Access. Until next time, thank you very much.